So in this third lecture is actually what I will do is this paper which I wrote with my student. We look at the drivers of farmers' income, and in that context the role of farm size and diversification. How do these things play themselves out in determining the farmer's income? Okay, so that's what I'll cover here, and this is again based on a paper that was published in Decision. The journal's name is called Decision, which is published by IIM Calcutta. So it's a paper which is available in that. So this is the background to the paper. Many of you would know, in fact all of you probably know, that on 28th February 2016 the Prime Minister kind of set this target of doubling of farmers' income by the year 2022. Now the very target he set is qualitatively completely different from what the thinking in the government has been historically right from independence. Okay, all through the concern was on production, okay, food production, and rightly so. Okay, I mean till the Green Revolution came and then the food situation got transformed. The basic concern of the country was, do we have adequate food? Okay, and remember that there were very dire predictions of mass starvations and in the Indian subcontinent prior at the time of independence, early 1950s and all. The Malthusian kind of idea was being portrayed, and very strongly so by several people. And if it was not for the government's resolve in pushing for the Green Revolution, then things could have been quite different in this country. Okay, so that was a fundamental breakthrough in the economic structure of the country. So we moved from a scarcity economy to a kind of just about managing economy to now a surplus food wasting economy. In my view, we are wasting a lot of resources in producing rice and wheat when we should be looking at other commodities which are nutritionally more critical and which would enhance the quality of life in the country, and which would also benefit farmers' income, farmers themselves. Okay, so all through the stress has always been on physical quantitative targets. What is the food grain production target? So many million tons. Okay, you look at all the policy documents, plan after plan after plan. The stress has always been on such volumes. So this is the amount of food we have to produce, so we need this much fertilizer, we need this much of pesticide, we need this much of irrigation, etc., etc. Everything quantitative. And in all this, the farmers' profitability was a kind of a footnote, or at best one paragraph. Okay, we have to also worry about the livelihood of farmers, but the main focus and concern was on the volumes. And as I said, historically there was a valid reason, but I think we crossed that threshold long, and these kind of quantitative focus continued needlessly long. We should have, and for the first time actually we had somebody, and that too at the Prime Minister level, talking of farmers' income. And in that sense, this is a qualitatively different target. That is something that needs to be kept in mind. But once this was said, and he said it in stark terms, doubling of farmers' income, very catchy, okay? It sets your mind thinking on completely different framework. You're no more talking of how much to produce, but you will now think about what is it you should produce in order to double the income. The very focus changes, okay, and rightly so. This actually generated a lot of debate, and it's a right debate. That the question is, can we achieve it? Because remember that in the 1960s, that was the question: can India become self-sufficient in food? That was the right question in that time, and this is the right question now. Is it feasible for doubling the farmer's income? Okay, is that feasible, and if so, what needs to be done and how do you go about doing it? These are the kind of questions, and several studies came about. This is the National Academy of Agricultural Science. They brought out a report in which they clearly mention what are all the constraints that the economy would face to achieve this target. And there was an article by Ramesh Chand which also notes that it is possible for significant growth, but for that you need the quality of inputs is something he was focusing on. The quality of seeds, the quality of fertilizer, the quality of power supply, okay, and the expansion of irrigation network. These were all critical elements in that Chand identified. And Bittal and his co-authors also argue that they raise a more fundamental question, like when you say doubling of farmers' income, you should first identify who the low income farmers are, whose income. When you say farmers' income, we already saw 17,000 in Bihar versus 1 lakh plus in Punjab per capita income. Whose income are you going to double? Is it every farmer's income at whatever levels they are in? You are going to just simply double it? So these kind of nuts and bolts questions start falling out the moment, but these are questions which nobody thought about. That's the qualitative difference. These were not questions in the research agenda for till this target was set. Nobody was talking about these kind of things, okay. And of course there were people who said it is feasible, but it would be a lot of work. But there were also others who said that, look, it's going to be extremely difficult because you are talking over a 6-year horizon, which means you need about 12% growth rate. And we never crossed even 4% GDP growth rate in agriculture. So you are now tripling the growth rate, first and foremost. Is it doable? So this kind of questioning has to be there, and it is rightly there, okay. And in an equal way, we ask the question, okay, now what constitutes farmer's income? That's again not very clear. Okay, and we take the position that one needs to distinguish between farm income and farmer's income. Okay, farm income is essentially income that's coming straight out of the farm, agricultural sources only, so which means through the production of crop and various animal products directly out of the farm. Whereas a farmer's income is a different concept, because the farmer can also get income from non-farm sources, right? And therefore, if you are talking of farmer's income, you need to talk not just of the farm income, which is what all of them talked about. They all talked about only farm income. And then the question was, how do we double it? Then we say farmer's income means non-farm also. So you talk in a more holistic manner, covering both farm and the non-farm. Okay, and this is not very hypothetical distinction. It's actually born in the data. Over 70% of agricultural households. Okay, to note is this that this is 70th round, which is 2012-13. In 2012-13, 70% of agricultural households reported receiving both farm and non-farm income. Okay, 70% of agricultural households. Oops. Okay, so there is a need to keep that distinction in mind. Now, in the meanwhile, the government also, of course, what do? The government sets up committees, right? So they set up a committee to look at this question on doubling farmers' income. It's popularly called the LOI Committee report, named after the chairman, Ashok Dalwai. And basic idea was to prepare a comprehensive report for formulating policies on doubling farmers' income. It's 14 volume report, okay, 14 volumes on what needs to be done. How many can read that? Okay, been submitted in September 2018, 14 volumes of what needs to be done. So there's a lot to be done. And okay, in this, and but to be fair, this is not the only committee that wrote so many volumes. There were previous committees also that wrote so many volumes. Okay, and some famous committees also that have written volumes on what needs to be done for agriculture. Okay. Okay, so here it is. So one of the things that they picked up in this, which comes prominently in this report, is diversification as a strategy. Okay, so the question was in the morning, do you need to diversify? The answer is, well, you need to diversify if you want to increase the income of farmers. Okay, and the word diversification, a simple word count, okay, my student did this and he said 351 times it has appeared in this report, just that word. So that is so important. Okay, and diversification towards what? Towards high value commodities, okay, which include livestock, so that it can accelerate the growth in income. Okay, and it also one of the concerns in all this is, the one thing that agriculture always faces is that there are those huge negative shocks that hit the sector, and therefore the question of risk hedging matters. Okay, and extreme weather conditions are now, at least it seems that we are now facing a greater frequency of extreme weather conditions at a higher frequency in all parts of the country now. And so protection against those kind of production risks, and then of course the market risk is also there. Okay, market risk is primarily that you produce and then you find the product price crashes. Okay, and then you lose, you don't gain much. Whatever productivity gains you made gets lost because the prices have crashed. So you need some kind of protection against, some kind of hedging against both these production and market risks. So the committee has a lot to say on that, and actually even diversification is a risk mitigation strategy. I mean, that everybody tells you, right? Okay, when you go to an investment advisor, he will say diversify your portfolio. Okay, don't have everything in one basket. Don't put all eggs in one basket. This is something we learned as children, right? Yes, I don't deny that, but diversification is supposed to reduce that.
But I suppose I am a rice cultivator, I am going for the vegetable culture.
Going for? No, there is a certain logic to why go for high value crops.
Diversification may carry lots of risk. Suppose I am, as you are saying that, as I am a rice cultivator and I have some of government policies are to me, you go through the horticulture or viticulture. It means my resources will get destroyed.
Okay, so let me answer all of them one by one. Okay, first, it's very difficult to argue that focusing on one commodity lowers your risk. Diversification actually is a risk mitigation strategy, whether it is agriculture, whether it is financial markets, whether it is investing in household versus gold versus cash versus bank deposits, saving deposits, fixed deposit, government PPF. All these are different instruments. Each of them carry a certain risk and a certain reward. No, please. Don't be so charitable to educated people. Huh? Educated people don't make much money or quite often. Okay, don't be so charitable. They are also Budhus. Okay, but the point is the following, that every activity comes with a certain risk and a certain reward. Okay, so when you diversify your portfolio, the aggregate risk is much lower than the risk on individual activities. Yeah. So the aggregate risk comes down when you have a diversified portfolio, because why does that happen? Because the market risk does not move in the same direction for all the commodities at any point in time. In other words, all agricultural prices do not fall simultaneously down, do not rise up simultaneously. You often find the price of one good rising, the other one falling. At a different time this will rise and the other one will fall, and so on. So they are fluctuating, but at any given point in time they all don't go up together or come down together. Okay, so when you're talking of risk reduction through diversification, this is what. So when you have a portfolio and each item in the portfolio is moving up and down, not moving simultaneously up and down, then the aggregate risk of your portfolio is less than the individual risks. Okay, that's the idea of diversification, period, regardless of what it is that you are diversifying. Yeah. Show you why you still need to diversify. Okay, and to your question about why high value products, high value commodities, one important characteristic of agricultural products, food products, cereals especially, food grains, cereals especially, is the income elasticity of demand. The income elasticity of demand for food is close to zero, and in some cases even negative. Okay, so if for a commodity, I'm in the camp that thinks rice and wheat have negative income elasticity, but ignore my preference. You say that it is close to zero, positive, but very close to zero. What does that mean? It means that the economy is growing maybe 6%, 7%, 8%, whatever it is, given all the uncertainties in the economy, given uncertainties in the data, whatever it is, 6% to 8%, doesn't matter, whatever percentage, the economy is growing, meaning income is growing. What would be its effect on food demand for rice and wheat? If the income elasticity is close to zero, you are getting a zero out of the income growth. Then what increases the demand for rice and wheat? How would the demand grow? The only channel is population growth. Whereas when it comes to high value commodities like fruits, vegetables, dairy, meat, poultry, fish, these are commodities where the income elasticity of demand is high, and for some of them greater than 1. And that's why you need to get into those commodities. And that is where the growth is. And so if the economy grows at 6% or 8%, you are going to get that much more effect. And as the general income level grows for everybody, more and more consumption comes. The demand rises for these commodities. So hence you need to diversify. Yes, you will be within the set of commodities in which you have comparative advantage, but not one. Have a portfolio. And also it is possible that there are seasonal comparative advantage. Some commodities grow in some season, but on the same plot of land in the next season some other commodity can grow. So you have to balance out all these things. So that's why when they talk of diversification as a strategy, there is a risk element that they are trying to address. There is also the income elasticity issue that they are trying to address. These are real strong points that one needs to remember. Okay. Of these products, first of all, with the high value products, there are two effects that one would get. One is the direct demand for the raw product increases, has a high elasticity of demand, income elasticity. Secondly, the same thing as a processed product commands an even higher value. Okay, even poor households consume milk. Okay, it is there in the NSS demand. You look at the consumption survey, you will find that the amount that they are consuming is little. I admit that, but they are consuming. They are spending money on such high value products. Okay, and that is the point, that when their income grows, their consumption of the dairy products will go, and over time, and others who are at a higher level of income start consuming other dairy products which are all processed products like paneer, cheese. These need, so you have further value addition taking place on those products, and therefore the demand increases even more. So if your production is oriented towards meeting these demand, then there will be a sustained growth in income. That's the idea here. Okay, so it both as a raw product and as process for processing requirements, there is enormous demand. So helps in value addition, and you can adapt to the changing market conditions. Plus, I have not talked about the exports. Okay, but there is an export market. Global market is also there. A lot of items that India exports. Okay, but that's on the farm side. They also talk about, in this committee, talk about non-farm diversification. Okay, and the non-farm appears 264 times. It's not that they are blind to that. They are very much they are very, very conscious of the potential for non-farm as a source of income for farmers. Okay, and they in fact distinguish between employment opportunities near the farm and in non-farm economic activities. Now this is near farm concept is something which is interesting and important, meaning that a lot of agro processing can actually happen right at the farm itself, near the farm. Okay, I'll give you some simple examples. Okay, now I don't know how many of you are aware of this. You go to vegetable markets and in particular look for cauliflower. How do they sell cauliflower? It comes with all those leaves. And what do we do with the leaf? When we take the cauliflower home, we just throw those leaves out. Right? As a consumer, you are paying for the leaf, because when he weighs you, he gives you with the leaf, right? You are paying for the leaf, which you are dumping. As the producer, the farmer is not getting money for the cauliflower alone. He is also being paid for the leaf. Okay? But if the processing happens there and he were to cut the leaf out, put it in his compost, then he gets farm manure. Right? And after removing the leaf, if he packages it, the value addition goes up tremendously. He can sell the same cauliflower at a much, much higher rate. And the final consumer is paying only for the cauliflower, not for the leaves. But this is a processing that can happen on the farm. Okay, and like that's just one example. Like that, you can think of several things that can be actually carried out near the farm. Several processing activities that can be carried out there. Cleaning of fruits and vegetables, simple processings. Okay, and when you do all these things at the farm, a lot of these biodegradable resources flow back into the farm itself. It is less polluting, far less polluting, and you don't have to worry about garbage clearance in the city that much. Yes, but wait. Huh? No, but wait. He may be able to strike a better deal with buyers there. He can sell, I'm giving you processed cauliflowers.
But imagine situation in the rural area. In rural area, do you think people will buy such processed vegetables?
Will not take place overnight. Okay? But what you need to think through is that this is a strategy that in 4 to 5 years you can actually bring about a great transformation where a lot of these kind of processing happens on the farm. I'm not saying tomorrow, but it's a strategy wherein you are moving a lot of processing onto the farm itself. It's a strategy for employment generation out of agriculture, but in the village, in the rural area. So that's the kind of transformational change that you have to start thinking about. Okay? And that's what we mean by near farm jobs. And what is anybody's guess? How much of the US economy depends on agriculture? No, you didn't get my question correct. I said how much of the US economy depends on agriculture. The word is depends. I read somewhere, I don't know the exact number, but that is share of agriculture GDP. I said dependency on agriculture. That somewhere I read it is close to 1/4. 1/4 of the US economy depends on agriculture, meaning a lot of processing activities all depend on what comes out of the farm. Happen, and they rightly tell that a lot of processing can happen near the farm, and there has to be shift from farm to non-farm occupations. One needs that, and without that, farmer's income can't double. Okay, but here is the twist that's quite often ignored. Yes, but what is the problem in agriculture today? You have excess of labor there. It is generating some 16-17% of the GDP with about 48-49% of the labor. By no stretch of imagination can you tell me that there is a scarcity there. It will keep moving. It will keep moving. Okay, but can diversification be endless? Now here is where we think that there is an optimal level of diversification, as opposed to generally talking of diversification as if it's an open-ended phenomenon. No, it's not. There has to be an optimal amount of diversification. Why is that? And that is because of this time. All of us are endowed with only 24 hours, not a second more, not a second less. So it's only that much labor time that you can give. So if you are spread into 10 activities, what can be your efficiency as opposed to 3 activities, 2 or 3 activities? have to distribute their labor time across livelihood activities. So, for example, you have a farm, you are also working as a say a bus driver. You have done 8 hours of bus driving and then you come to the farm, you are already a tired person. How much can you work on the farm? And if on top of that you have 2 cows to take care, how much can you spend time? The person will be completely fatigued out, right? So, the efficiency in each activity will come down, and your earnings in each activity will also be suboptimal. Yes? Here we have to think about who is a farmer and so on. Okay, we will come to that. Those aspects need some careful thinking also. And then you have this issue of farm size. Somebody said about farm size, right? Average farm size in India is very low. 67% of total operational land holdings are owned by marginal farmers, okay, with an average size 0.39 hectares. So, 67% of the country's land is by is in the hands of marginal farmers with 0.39 hectares, which is very, very low. What can you do there? Okay. Now, the average farm size has remained unchanged between 2001 and 10-11, around 0.4 hectares. Okay. The average farm size of large farmers has increased marginally, 17.12 hectares in 2001 to 17.38 hectares in 2010-11. This is your large farmers, the average size of large farmers, what you call as large farms. But even these large farms in India are small. Okay, because there are countries where the farm sizes are far, far larger. So even your large farm is, be very clear, not very large. There may be those isolated very large farmers, but they are handful. Okay. So this is the reality of farm size in the country. Now what does that mean? It means that when you have a farm size which is so small, let us assume you are in the peak efficiency. With 0.4 hectares, how much marketable surplus can you generate for a decent livelihood? Decent living. Even if you are the most efficient farmer on earth, 0.4 hectares, nothing much can come out. You have to recognize that. Okay. But the reality is small farmers are not so efficient. The reality is they in fact lack access to inputs and credit especially. That's the reality. Which means their ability to adopt new technologies and improve their productivity. Everything is constrained. Okay. In the 1960s and 70s, there was a very lively debate in the literature on farm size and efficiency. But the farm size then was much, much bigger than farm sizes today. Okay. And there was a lot of literature which showed that small farms are efficient. But the small farm of those days would now be possibly called as medium farm. Yes, I know. Doesn't matter. 0.4 hectares, how much can you generate? Marketable surplus. Okay, so that's to me arguing on the efficiency of farm size when the farm sizes are so low is meaningless time pass. To me it's a time pass debate, really speaking. Practical value is zero in that. Okay. So what is the reality of those farmers? When prices are on the upswing, they are unable to benefit because they don't have marketable surplus. But whenever price crashes, they are forced to take a hit. This is the reality. They are hit when there is a downside, but they don't have the capacity to benefit out of an upswing in the price. Okay. So under these situations, therefore, you have to then think of okay, now how does it all affect the farmer's income? Now I have this diversification story, I have this farm size issue here. Okay. So one doesn't know really how the farm size is actually impacting on farmer's income, because there is not much literature. Farm size and productivity, yes, it started way back in 62 and it's continuing. One of the recent studies on this is of course Mishra and Gaurav and Mishra. Inverse relationship between farm size productivity, all that is fine. Large farms suffer from diseconomies of scale. All those old stories are there. I don't deny that. It may be true, may not be true. It is to me irrelevant. Yes. I am telling you, it could very well be there, but so what? When you don't have a large marketable surplus, how does it matter? Because you are operating out of a tiny, your operation size is so small. Okay. Now, regardless of this debate, but we also know that there is an agrarian crisis, and who is suffering the agrarian crisis? It is marginal and small farmers, right? So we know all these things is going on there. So what we do in this paper is try to understand the relationship between farmers' income, farm size, and diversification. And when we talk of diversification, we no longer look at only the farm. We look at the aggregate picture where the farm and the non-farm diversification is considered. Okay. And households, basically we say that households have to optimally choose on-farm and off-farm diversification, and they have to decide on how many number of crops they want to be in, how many number of animal products they want to be in, how many number of non-farm activities that they want to get into. Okay, so that their aggregate income is maximized. Yes, and in all this, the issue is really the time constraint. So when you have time constraint, when you are already spread into 2 or 3 activities, then you can't take up a 4th one. When I already have commitment for 2 papers, I can't take a 3rd paper to start working on. Right? It's like that. It's there even in our profession. Right? It's like that. So what we do is we estimate an empirical relationship of this nature. Log y on farm size, on farm diversification, non-farm diversification, and their square terms, then a bunch of household characteristics, farm characteristics, and locational characteristics. Okay. Now these are locational characteristics that is specific to that household. That is the one thing that you need to, it's not the, so a person living here has his neighborhood, right? The kind of thing that I talked in the morning. So that defines their locational characteristic. okay, which could be district rainfall and so on and so forth. Now, our hypothesis is that beta 1, beta 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Now, beta 1 is farm size, 2 and 3 are non-farm, off-farm and non-farm, 4 and 5 are the quadratic terms. Okay. So, we expect, we don't know what it is, plus or minus, we don't know. That is farm size and income. What is the relationship? I don't know. Whatever comes, comes. Okay. Beta 2 and beta 3, as the diversification increases, we expect it to have a positive impact, but there is an optimal level of diversification, which means we actually, so if you were to plot the number of activities you are in and the income, there could be a certain optimal level. And if you have excess, if you are into excess number of activities, then you are not maximizing your income. So, the linear terms will have a positive, whereas the quadratic terms we expect it to be negative, but it need not be. But we expect it to be negative if our hypothesis that there is an optimal holds, then they should come with a negative sign. This is our hypothesis. Okay, the date round NSS situation assessment. Now, here is where the trouble starts. Who is an agricultural household? So, the question of assessing, you ask, should I count it in agriculture or should I count it in non-agriculture? How do I assess it? My question, fundamental question is, who is a farmer? Who is the agricultural household? This is NSS's definition. Two parts to the definition. Okay. Agricultural household is defined as one that is receiving value of products greater than or equal to 3,000 in 2011-12 over the whole year, annual income. Okay, 3,000 rupees from agriculture activities, which means cultivation of crops, animal husbandry, poultry, fishing, etc. During the last 365 days, if they had got 3,000 rupees, you are an agricultural household. Value of produce. Value of produce. It is not the net returns. It is the value of produce. And at least one member is describing agriculture as a prime and principal status or subsidy status. Okay, so this is the definition NSS uses. 3,000 rupees. Okay, for the entire year. Value of produce, not net returns. This is 2011-12 prices or 12-13 prices, sorry, current. No. Cash. You think it is reasonable? Too low? So, you are practically bringing everybody as an agricultural household. Of milk in 2012-13. So, if you had a cow that produced, how many liters you need? And you can declare, but remember that they also say that you have to be at least one member of the household is either in the principal status or subsidiary status. क्या है पूछने के क्या है? हाँ, sorry. No, it is defined on it. They don't define on ownership because there are a lot of leased in farms. That is, farmers who operate land that are leased, they don't own the land. So, but they are treated as agricultural households quite rightly. But this is ridiculously low level. Both. Oh, the NSS enumerator comes and asks you what is your profession. So you say agriculture, primary status, secondary. They will explain to you what is primary, secondary, and then you say हाँ हाँ मैं करता हूँ. So over. That's it. It's as simple as that. 5,000 rupees for the latest round. Yeah, but whatever it is. So you see, practically everybody can say I am a farmer and declare yourself as an agriculture household. Okay, okay, but this is the date, huh? Yeah, yeah. This is only value of produce. I don't care whether you sold it or not. That's your problem. Okay. A little bit further. Let's go beyond that. Okay. So, data collected 2 visits. Okay. As I said, visit 1 covers the data for the Kharif season, which is due July to December of 2012, and visit 2 gives the data for the Rabi season, June 2013. Okay, and so when you combine the information over these 2 visits, you can basically get the annual income. Okay, of the entire year. Okay, and so there are about 35,200 households interviewed in visit 1. Out of them 34,907 could not be interviewed during the visit 2. So actually the dropout is not very high. It's less than 300 households, right? So in that sense, the casualty or the missing household. So basically, you know, you go to in the visit 2 and you find that the household is not there because they have migrated. So that kind of a thing. But that casualty is very, very small. 293 is, so that doesn't affect the survey outcome much. Okay. Do some categorization based on the principal source of income, and the principal source of the income can be, here is the thing, okay, it is declaring itself as an agriculture household, but its principal source of income can be a non-farm source or remittance or pension, okay, but it has declared itself as an agriculture household because they got 3,000 rupees from one cow in the backyard, and somebody said that I am working full time. Okay, it provides information regarding the receipts and expenditure only from 4 sources, which is crop, livestock, non-farm, and wages and salary. Meaning that you don't get any information on remittance, pensions, etc. So the transfer part we don't know, but essentially the returns to economic activity, you can work it out because you get the receipt as well as the expenses, the business expenses. So farm level expense, or if it is a non-farm activity, whatever is the enterprise expenditure that you have incurred, so you will get that information. Okay. So one can work out the returns to the economic activity. So in our analysis, what we did is that the households that reported remittances, pensions, or any other source as the primary source, we just dropped them from the analysis. So we so there are this many households which had to be dropped. See, the casualty itself was only 293 households, but out of the 34,907 households for which you get data from both visits, right? Out of that, close to 8,000 households actually say that they are getting remittance or pension or some such thing as a primary source of income, even though No, 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 no. Non-farm we don't drop. It's only the remittance, pension, and others. Okay. Remember, these are the categories: crop income, livestock income, non-farm income, wages and salary. Okay. And apart from that, they have remittance, pension, and transfers. Right? Remittance, pension, and others. That there is some always a residual category. Right? So it is these three which, if any household had declared these three as the principal source of income, they were dropped out. Okay. Okay, so we dropped them out. Why did we drop them out? Two important reasons. Okay, one is the information is incomplete. Okay, either for the dependent variable or for some of the explanatory variable. Okay, so for these households, when you actually look at the data carefully, a lot of information on which this blank, a lot of variables for which you don't have information in the. So in that case, you can't really estimate the returns to economic activity. Okay, and another set of another reason why we dropped not all of them are by the way, I'm sorry, I'm mistaken. Not all of these were because of pensions and remittances, but there is one more reason which is critical, that there were several households which experienced a negative income shock during that year. So when we actually estimated the returns to the farming and the non-farm activity and you sum total it, you get a negative number. Okay, it's usually because the farm income is negative, but it dominates over whatever non-farm income that they got. So they got such a big shock that they are left with a negative income. And so given that we are using a log linear model, then we thought we can't handle it and we dropped them. Okay, so our analysis is left with 26,951 households. So our estimation and further analysis is based on these households. Now here some data limitations themselves need to be noted down because they impact the estimates themselves. Okay, and the most critical thing is what is the expenditure on agriculture or on non-agriculture that they cover. What they include is only expenditure incurred out of pocket. Okay, meaning that it limits the information on usage of farm inputs. Sorry. So any input that you had stored and you are using it, okay, so you harvested last year, so some amount of the harvest you kept as seed and you are using it in the next season, which is a very standard practice. But because you used your own produce as a seed, against that there is no cost, it's marked as 0. So you are actually undervaluing the total expenditure on inputs, because any farm saved inputs carry a 0 value. Yes. Imputed value for farm saved in seeds, farm saved manure, family labor, and family labor not just in agriculture but family labor sitting in your grocery store that you are running. Okay, you may be running a grocery store in the village, and if one member of your family is sitting there, you are not paying a wage, but there is an imputed labor cost, there is nothing there. Okay, so which means that whether it is the farm side or the non-farm side, the input costs are underestimated, because what they record is only the actual incurred expenses out of pocket. And even in this there is one problem. Okay, now if along with that, if the agency source of a farm input, especially fertilizer and electricity, is reported as government, that is, they also ask the question, what is the agency from which you bought the input? So if you say that you bought the input from the government depot, government shop, or electricity from the electricity authority, they put a zero there. They don't record how much ever you are paying. It's just recorded as zero. So even the fertilizer cost, electricity cost is underreported. Okay, I mean, we are presuming that it is because the government is giving subsidies on these commodities, so they are not recording. Because the question is marketed purchase, market purchase. So which means it is supposed to have a market price. But if these are subsidized by the government, there is no market price for it. So there is no market price, so it is zero valued. But you are spending on that. So there is a serious underestimation of the input, which means that you are actually overestimating the returns. The net returns are overestimated. So this is an important point that one needs to keep in mind. So these are all difficulties that you would face when you deal with the NSS data. Another one is non-uniform reference period. For farm, for crop cultivation and wages, they use a 6-month reference period. Whereas for non-farm, they say recall over the last 30 days. Okay, so then there is it's non-uniform reference period, so you have to do some annualization of these things, right? So for the non-farm, okay, since we are working with the 2 seasons separately, we inflate it for the respective season, so that you by multiplying by 6. So that's one weakness again coming from it. So we have to annualize those components. And to that extent, there are certain issues that crop up. We may be overstating, understating, okay, but more importantly, the seasonality is lost. So they could be subject to seasonality effects, but we just don't know. So those issues will cannot be handled. So we simply have to accept it as it is. Okay, and so these are some of the important limitations. So keeping that in mind, I will now show what the data tells. Okay, principal source of income. Okay, this is the percentage of all households that is reporting cultivation, 63%. 22% says their principal source is wages and salaries in the rural areas. Agricultural households, okay, reporting wages and salary as the principal source. Nearly 5% say non-farm enterprise, non-agricultural enterprise is their principal source. Okay, and then you have livestock, remittances, etc. coming up. Now the same thing broken up by marginal, small, medium, etc. And you do find that cultivation is actually less important for the marginal farmers as opposed to the rest of them. And we said these are 67% of the population, right? So cultivation itself is not the primary source of income for them. Actually, look at this, 32%, 1/3 nearly is saying 1/3 of marginal agricultural households are saying that for them wages and salaries are the most important source of income.
salaries, it makes sense.
It makes sense. I'm not denying that. This is completely sensible, but this is the reality there.
So that component except wage and salary includes more, wage component includes the agricultural labor. The salary component includes
Regardless of where it is, whether it is from someone else's farm or some non-farm activity, we don't know.
also disaggregate the data for wage employment and the salary employment.
One can do that, but we have not done that because you will actually get the information at the household level, right? So you can break it into those components. Their primary source of income. Okay, bad colors, I suppose. Average activities. No, this is what it is, the diversification story. Average number of crops that agricultural households are involved in, about 2, all of them. Visit 1, visit 2. Whereas a large farm in visit 2 is involved in only 1 crop. Okay. The average number of animal husbandry activities, 1 in both seasons by all of them. Average number of non-farm activities in the 2 seasons, 1, 1, 1, but the medium and large are not involved in non-farm on an average in Kharif season, but in Rabi they are involved. So there is a seasonal dimension to it, there is also a farm size aspect to it. Okay. Some summary statistics. So this is the total income that we estimated, the annual total income. It's about 1,26,000, but the standard deviation is 2,39,000. So there's a huge variation in the sample. Okay. And per capita income is 29,000. Land holding in hectares is 1.45. Diversification measures, number of crops grown is 2.2, animal is 1.2, non-farm is 0.9. This is for the entire sample, okay, whereas the previous table showed it by farm size. Total income, that is basically what we estimated, farm and non-farm income. Yes, all 26,000 of them, their average, the mean annual income. Okay. These are the farm characteristics. The share of irrigated land is about 50%, diesel expenditure is 708 rupees, electricity and so on and so forth. So we have the expenditure on different items and the share of irrigated land in the total, that also we have. We can extract all this information from the NSS. This is the household characteristic. Average size 5.4. Ratio of adult male to female is 0.4. The average age of household is 31.3. The average age of household members engaged in agriculture. Okay, this is the average of all adults. This is the average of adults in agriculture. That's about 40.7. Okay, the percentage of household members engaged in MGNREJS. Okay, 30.8. And the share of household members engaged in agriculture is about 59%. Okay, so 41% of household members are not engaged in agriculture at all. We'll come to that. I can't go without currents. Okay, but it's only 5.1% which reported some insurance. 39.5% received some kind of a technical advice. The loan, 59% had some loan outstanding. 34% of the households are SCST. 98% of them actually owned, out of which 61% is Paka house, 86% had safe drinking water, and 88% had ration card. These are all some characteristics that you will see at the household level. Now, why are we worried about all these things? One can distinguish households based on all these characteristics. Well, that saved, farm saved means out of their own farm they are getting those inputs, and you see this is fairly high. 7% of human labor is from within the family, and 33% of the animal labor is coming from their own animals. So, which means there is no imputed cost of those labor, and therefore you are understating the value of those labor. Okay. And this is the agency from which they procured. Okay. So, here is where the issue is. Okay, when there is government agencies, then they are underreporting the value. Okay. So, they ask where did you get the electricity or fertilizer, and then if you say government depot, then they put a 0 value there. So, here are the regression results. This is page 1, page 2. Okay. And this is only one first visit. Okay. So, you see we have a lot of variables. Let me just read it out. Okay, or let me not. So, you have the crop count in visit 1, square term of that, livestock count, square of that, non-farm count, square of that, irrigation and irrigation square, a dummy variable for insurance, and then expenditure on diesel, electricity, fertilizer and seed, human and animal labor, a dummy for the technology advice, a dummy for whether you have a outstanding credit, the household size in number, then the number of household members engaged in MGNREGA in visit 1, and that interacted with the farm size. Then we had dummy for STSC, then we had for their assets, own house, Paka house. This is basically telling some kind of the economic position of the house on an average, the household's education, average household education and its square, then the male female ratio and its and then the age of the household, square of the standard deviation of the age of the household. Because if you have within the household generally working age, okay, you have 5 members, if 4 of them are all working age, you can expect that family to have a higher income level, as opposed to 5 members in another household with 2 children and 1 old person and 2 working age people. That household is likely to have a lesser income. So, the standard deviation of the age can influence the income level. So, we put that, and standard deviation. Okay, then the average age of the people working in agriculture, and again the standard deviation of those people, the adults working in agriculture. Okay, and then in MGNREGA, what is the male female ratio within the household? Then we have a rainfall deviation. Okay, and the first, what is the first? Income per capita, okay, now I remember. Now in the first version, we don't have the rainfall deviation. In the second, we had rainfall deviation, and in the third model, we allow for state and region dummies. The region is basically the region, not any other. Okay, so is there any location specific characteristic that you can go? So these are basically fixed effects that we are allowing for. Whether you have Paka house or not? Yes or no? Here you see 98% of them own their house, but only 61% have a Paka house. So Paka house means you can say that your wealth position is higher than a person without a Paka house. So there is a wealth effect that, so we are controlling for that. Okay. So this is for the Rabi season, same set of variables we use. Okay, and here are the results. We possibly could have done that. Consumption. We could have done that, but we
remove inputs on diesel, electricity.
in this data, for this sample at least, it is suggesting a linear relationship. So just keep going into non-farm. Okay. So this could be because we are still at the very low end of the structural transformation. Okay, it's possible. So as you get into higher and higher levels of structural transformation, this may not stand. We may again get into some kind of a inverted U. Okay, but the inverted U makes sense because of a time constraint which is not factored in usually, and in the case of animals especially it is very obvious. In having a cow in the backyard and also a few chicken, you have to run behind them, right? And you have only that much time. Yes, I don't deny that, but we are doing a count. So if you are into cattle, have cattle. We are not saying how many cattle. We are only saying have cattle. Don't have cattle and pigs and poultry and then you will be in trouble. Yeah. Okay, it is not like I can simply throw a few seeds and the crop comes on its own. I don't have to worry about that till it harvests. So it's ready for a harvest. There is no such thing. You have to take care of the crop. You have to take care of the animal. So there is time spent on it. So the number of activities is what you have to worry about, because every activity, regardless of the scale, you have to spend some minimum quality time. And when you have a time constraint, which everybody has, then it can eat into your efficiency. That's the point. So if there is demand for dairy products, some will specialize in dairy. They will not be in chicken. That's what we are saying. So go according to your comparative advantage. Diversify your portfolio, but don't do excess diversification. Basmati or long grain? That's again a similar kind of a question, right? Qualitatively, it is the same kind of a question. Okay, so when we keep saying there is a optimal, so what is the optimal level? So the optimal crop in Kharif is about 2.5. You can't have 2.5 crop. Maybe you can think of 2 full season crop and 1 half season crop. Maybe a vegetable for half the season. Okay. Whereas in Rabi it is 2. Okay. In terms of animal husbandry activity, it is 2.5. Now, as opposed to this, what is the actual situation? The current average number of crop is 2. Whereas the optimal number, okay, we rounded it off, so we called it 3. But there is some scope for improving the number of crops. but not a whole lot. But when it comes to animal husbandry, there is some scope here to increase the number of animal husbandry, especially in the Kharif season. Okay, and to 3 in the Rabi season, we can improve it. It's closer to 2, and this is actually closer to 3 that one can do it. Okay. Now, irrigation, this is a strange thing. These are the other variables. Okay. So, farm size and diversification was our main concern. So, I told you what the results are, but we also had a whole lot of other variables, and somebody asked why MGIDR is, so we will come to it. Okay. Irrigation does not have an impact on the level of income in both seasons. Yes. Not convincing. Why not? Characteristic. None of the expenditure on farm inputs have any impact on income in Kharif season, whereas during Rabi only the expenditure on seeds seem to have a negative impact. But even on rainfall, for instance, you may talk of rainfall in the previous year affecting water availability in this year and so on. So, the dynamics, when you have more than one period's data, then you can do a lot more, but there are those limitations which a cross section cannot handle right now. Okay. Okay, outstanding credit, positive impact during Rabi season only. So, credit seems to matter only for the Rabi season, and here is MG Nariga. That thing like anything. We tried MG Nariga in several fashion. Consistently we found negative effect. Huh? He is convinced. Convinced. Okay. I thought that's the one on which you will all. Okay. And I think it is this opportunity cost of time spent on it. It may not, you may actually earn more by going elsewhere, but because this seems to be easy money, you are going after it. No, but this one, this is, here is an household in which some member is in Nariga, and that household is experiencing a reduction in income. Then what it could have if that member was not in Nariga? Meaning, so if in a family of 5, one person went and stood in the queue for Nariga, that person could have actually earned more and the family's income could have been higher than spending the time on Nariga.
Timing of Nariga, Nariga time. Nariga is for off-season labor, not during the peak time of agriculture. So it's about timing of when Nariga is doing time.
Yes, but unfortunately, I agree. What you are saying, I agree in the sense that to address that issue, I should actually have monthly income. Then I can, during those months when really the only activity available, then is my income higher in that month. Unfortunately, I can't do that analysis because I don't have monthly income data. With difficulty we are estimating, with all kinds of limitations we are estimating the seasonal income. Okay, but if I count the income over the entire season, this is having a negative effect. That's what it means. So, what I can interpret is the following. So, if there was a particular month when, say, there is no local employment available in farm or maybe even in the off farm. So, if instead of work, the person lining up in Nariga, if the person went to some other place to work, she or he could have got more. That is what this is suggesting. Okay. How the negative impact on income? Education helps in raising the income, but only at a higher level after a certain minimum level of income. So it is not like it's a linear thing, so you actually get a U-shaped curve. So there is a certain minimum level of education beyond which only the positive effect of education kicks in. Okay. Higher male to female ratio helps during the Rabi season, presumably because the labor will be more willing to move out. Okay. Male labor may be willing to move out and work elsewhere. Okay, farm size would be a constraint, so these are the things that we come up with, which suggests that you need some institutional innovation if you want to break that farm size constraint. What do we mean here? Maybe some kind of, regardless of the farm, okay, some kind of pooling of resources, especially when it comes to marketing the product. Because what is getting lost now is economies of scale. Because you have two tiny farms, we are losing out on economies of scale that technology can bring in. Okay. So you may need some form of pooling of land, some form of pooling of resources in order to be able to extract a better economies of scale. And this can come at the production stage, this can come at the marketing stage, also in sourcing inputs, sourcing credit. Okay. This is where the suggestion that you keep hearing, cooperatives, farmer producer organizations, etc., etc. We need to push aggressively on that. That's what our results would suggest. Second is there is significant scope for crop and animal husbandry. The average levels now are still well below the optimal level, so there is scope. And when you actually look at that in a regionally, when you look at it, spatially, then you will find that in some states, especially, the scope for increasing the number of crop and animal husbandry activities is more. They are far below the optimal. Education again is something that is required. Education improvement is again a key. Okay, these are some limitations which are coming from the data that I have already talked about, so let me not spend on it. Okay, on the education, actually there again we figured out what is the minimal education that we are looking for. I think it came to literate with formal schooling. In the NSS actually they have several categories of education, and there are some people literate without a formal schooling. They don't seem to matter. Okay, so when we actually tried each category, the minimum education level from where the positive impact starts is when the family is literate with formal schooling. So that is the minimum that you need to have. And on education we know that we are really backward.
So it is sensitive.
Huh?
I can see in my
Yeah.
numbers,
Be minimum literate and able to understand what that is. Read the instruction at least. Okay, so for that the minimum education required is literate with some formal schooling. Okay, be it seeds, be it fertilizers or pesticides, all these come with instructions for how best to use them, right? So one needs to be able to read them and understand and actually use them properly. Understand. It can complement it. Yes, yeah, we have this concept called progressive farmer. Okay, I am fine with that idea, but I also know that not all villages are socially cohesive. Life, unfortunate realities, but they are realities. Right. So, in that situation you have to think of how the farmer can help himself, and for that minimum education is literate. Forget even that part. Now, when you are talking of structural transformation, shifting people out of farm into non-farm, without education that's not going very far. So this is what we've been working in the last few years, and it's actually an important issue that matters for agriculture.